Okay, so thank you again for this opportunity. This was an invitation from Dr. Indigo. My name is Frida Liu, so it's an honor to be moderating today's session. So just a premise of what we're going to be talking about, how about the bravest people are the ones living their truth despite fear. So living in truth is more than just living integrity, living up to your potential or honesty. So it goes deeper. So our panel discussion today, living your truth, bravely be you. I know we had a session with all the ladies, like thinking of the right topic of what we're going to be talking about. So, over the next 90 minutes, you're going to hear their stories. I'm going to ask some questions. We're also going to open the floor for questions a little later. And just a couple of house rules before we begin again. Please be on mute, and we will be addressing any questions you may have at the end. So I'm very excited to be hearing everyone's story. I'm going to introduce all these speakers, a little bit of bio about all of them, and then they will get to speak for a couple of minutes each, and then we'll go into the Q&A. So the first speaker is Dr. Indigo Triplet, and she's going to be talking about general truths and living your truth, and she likes to be known as Dr. Indigo. That's a brand. There's a game called True or False. If Dr. Indigo was presented with these statements, which one is false? I have a mental health disorder. I'm a U.S. Marine. I'm married with 3 sons. I owned a multi-million-dollar company. So which are true and what is false? Sometimes the truth is harder to distinguish from what is false. So many people live in a life of falsehood for a myriad of reasons. It's easier to hide or not disclose the truth and live a lie versus living your truth. So she will be sharing her truth in how she built her company around products and services to inspire people and organizations to be real about who they are and what they want in life. She'll discuss the truth of her mental health is liberating despite being a double-edged sword, how it takes courage to be truthful, and how there are general truths. So she'll be talking about the absolute truth, and it comes in shades of gray, not in just black and white. Okay, next we have Teresa Go, and she'll be talking about power living her truth. So some people may think it's not all that lucky being born queer and disabled, especially in the world we live, but she thinks she's one of the luckiest people she knows, and to be honest, is that luck has little to do with it. So instead, it's due to incredible intention her parents set out in creating and shaping the world around her. If you don't know who she is a Paralympian based out of Singapore, Teresa Go. So I'm very excited to hear her story as well, and to be speaking and listening from a Paralympian. And third, we have Sunny Slaughter. She's going to be talking about courageous conversations. I love her name. I love her last name. She means business. So, and living your truth, Sunny offers insight into the power of courageous conversations and collaboration during the global pandemic, which unmasks the ongoing systemic trauma, violence, and racism experienced by Black people, and her finding purpose in gatherings of women leaders from diverse perspectives. So I did a bit of research on Sunny, and there were so many things that she's done. It's very difficult to encapsulate it in what I have to say. And also, I think in the time that she's been given, what she's done, it just goes on pages and pages, and everything is like, wow, 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 right? So I didn't know where to start. But let's begin and hear from the ladies. So I'd now like to pass it on to Dr. Indigo. Over to you.
Good morning, ladies. Good morning, audience. Give me a moment to share my screen. Can you see? Someone let me know if you see this. My slides?
Not yet, doctor.
Okay. Yeah, it is.
Happening.
Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Can you see this?
Yes.
Let me make sure. Do you see the page that says Golden Door?
Yes.
Great. And I was told to tell the audience to, I think it was, see it, but getting started, I'm Dr. Indigo. I love the topic of truth and integrity And I feel humbly inspired, as well as very fortunate to be amongst my sisters here. And we're going to talk about something really dear to us. And we're going to be talking about living your truth. Bravely be you. So just to give you a little context of who I am, I work in 3 primary spaces: mind wellness, transformational coaching, and growth capacity. You'll recognize, or maybe you'll recognize, some of these organizations that I've worked with in various areas, such as the Pentagon, International SOS, Bursa Malaysia right here, which is their stock exchange. So some of the work that I've done throughout the year has allowed me to work with organizations on a level where they had to look at who they are as an organization and step into their greatness based on being who they say that they are. And that to me is what truth is all about on an organizational level. But this morning, I'm going to talk to you about truth from an individual level. And I want to talk about general truth and living your truth. Truth telling is not the same, and I wrote this down so that you guys can see it. Here you see I'm accepting an award, the Inc. 500 award. I was 239 on the Inc. 500 award when at the time Forbes said there was 28 million small businesses in America. And I was ranked as 239, which is huge. And what's interesting is that a lot of it was because of the products and services that I offered. And this book series called Playing by the Unwritten Rules, moving from the middle to the top, from a job defense to a career offense, as well as here's what I think, this is what I know. So when I look at what I've written, what I do, I'm known for that. I'm known for being a person who worked from a space of integrity, worked from a space of looking and standing in front of the ugly truth and staring it down, dealing with it, not ignoring it. But here's something I want to say. Truth telling is not the same as not telling a lie. You know, a lot of times we think if we didn't tell a lie, then we told the truth. And that is not necessarily so. There are so many ways to not be truthful while not lying. And many of us are not truthful in our own skin, in our own lives. Similar to ethics and legal, you can be, you can do something that's legal by law. You can do it while it's not necessarily ethical. Or you can do something that's wrapped up in integrity, but not necessarily moral. And all of this sounds like I'm mincing words, but it's not. By pure definition, all of these things seem to be one, but they're not when you're talking about stepping into your greatness, stepping and living your truth. And that's where I think people get things confused. So for me, it's time to, not use these justifications for the things that we do. My sister Sunny is going to talk a little bit later about what's going on in America. By law, some of the things they can do, but is it ethically right? Is it morally right? And sometimes we lie to ourselves about what is right, what is wrong. But in all fairness, yes, there are shades of gray to truth, but when you are aligned with spirit, when you understand who you are, what you are, then it's very difficult to live that lie. And so I want us to understand that truth is a double-edged sword. There's a lot of people attribute this to Orson Welles, that he said, in a time of universal deceit, truth is a revolutionary act. That alone is a wonderful quote, albeit it was not by Orson Welles. We do not know who actually came up with that statement. So when we talk about truth, when we can truly be honest in a way that comes from spirit, not just from books, not from policies, not from laws, but from our spirit, it becomes a double-edged sword. And I say this because with all my accolades, I won what was called the African American Human Resources Association Trailblazer Award, which is a lifetime achievement. And all the while, I'm knowing that for me to become successful, I had to battle with a mental health challenge. I was diagnosed while working on my PhD with bipolar disorder. And I wanted to share that with the masses, but so many people said, no, Indigo, if you do, there will be such backlash. There's so much stigma that you're taking a risk being honest about who you are or what you embody. And so I say it's a double-edged sword because my success is partly attributed to my diagnosis. But I would also say many of my failures are attributed to my diagnosis, and sharing such has caused me to have to carry a burden that should not have to happen. So let me just say this. In all truth, stepping into living your truth gives you freedom. It allows you to live a life of authenticity. People can speak and write the truth, but it's not until one steps into living his or her truth that they are aligned with their purpose. See, it is not having a mental health diagnosis that is my cape, nor is it my crutch. It is a part of my story that allows me to be free. No one can use it against me, but I do not use it to step into anything other than being who I am authentically. So speaking your truth into existence is so important. I just want to share this before I pass this on. Each year, I do not practice a New Year's resolution. Instead, I find a word or a phrase that will guide my behavior, my actions throughout the year. So one year I chose living my life courageously. And this is when I was diagnosed. And so I knew that everything I did, everything I spoke must align with living my life courageously. And to give you an example, I would put it at the end of my email. And one time I wrote an email, and when I went to proofread it and got to the end where I said, living my life courageously, Dr. Indigo, I realized things that I had in that email did not align with who I said or what I said I would be and what I would do. So I had to go back and rewrite so that I align with that. So I want to say to you all, if you truly want to step into living your truth, speak your truth into existence, choose a word, choose a phrase that will guide and that will honor who you are. And I leave with this. Words so innocent and powerless as they are, as standing in a dictionary, how potent for good and evil they become in the hands of one who knows how to combine them. By Nathaniel Hawthorne. Us as writers, as speakers, our moral obligation, the reason why we were sent to this world at this time, a time where, as they say, universal deceit is happening. We as storytellers must live our truth to help others step into their truth, to help this world that has become so confused with what is truth and what is false. We must be able to help them so that we can now do what we need to do to save our world, a world that is in desperate need of our help. And I believe I'm back to the screen. Okay.
Thanks.
And I like to turn this over to Teresa.
Hi, everybody. I mean, what a great finish, and so relevant, I think, to what I think I want to share. Words so innocent and powerless as they are, how potent for good and evil they become in the hands of one who knows how to combine them. I think as a queer disabled person, in different hands, it could be a bad thing, and it's how people can shape how they want you to be, you know. But to me, there is really nothing more important than to live truthfully and authentically. And I am a queer disabled person, and all these labels, I think some people may not agree with. You know, some people don't like labels and say they're just kind of segregating everybody. But for me, because I see how people want to make certain parts of me invisible, that makes me more empowered to want to bring certain labels or all my labels to the front. You know, um, and I was saying Frida was saying in my bio that I feel like I'm one of the luckiest people on earth, and I do feel like that because I feel like I have nothing to complain about. Yeah, I can't think of a single thing I can, really complain about, and it's really, really thanks to the people around me, especially my family. They have been my support systems. They are my support system. They have been there since day one. And it's these support systems in various parts of my life that have enabled different phases in my life to raise me up and make sure that I am able to be as real as me, as independent as I can be, and I just want to kind of talk about how important they have been, and how we can be that support for somebody else. It can mean really from the literal physical enablement, like for me at home when they like houses, for me my house is on the lift landing, and before that it wasn't, so there was renovations done so that lift could get to my house. There's things like making sure there's a ramp so I can enter the house. It's all these small little things that add up. It's making sure that I am able to be independent, be free, and as able as I can be daily. It's not just a one-time thing. It's a constant enablement. And it got to even the emotional, other non-physical side of raising me up. I am queer. I've always been queer, and I think in Singapore, especially when it's not legal, I guess, to be gay, uh, and to some people that is something to hold them back on being true to who they are, and it's a real fear, and in some places of the world it's more fatal than others. And I think for me, I'm in a relatively lucky part of the world. It's not somewhere we feel constant physical danger, or I don't feel it, but that's also thanks to my parents. I know a lot of gay people who have had to come out, but I never had to come out because my parents came out to me. They're the ones who told me one day in the back of the car. My mom turned around and she said, Mommy and Daddy just want you to be able to find somebody who can take care of you, and it doesn't matter if it's a boy or a girl. And that little statement made me comfortable, made me feel like I could be who I am just around even the people closest to me, and that little small gesture meant so much to me because that just meant it continued that journey of truthfulness for me. Later on, there were people in the media who were in the position to, and who had the opportunity to, and they helped to put out an article, of a coming out article on the Straits Times, and that's the national papers. It's something that I have never expected to happen, and I cannot imagine just being a young kid when I was young, looking in the papers, looking on TV, and seeing somebody like me on a wheelchair, gay, and being who they are, and just that little being able to see that, I think is so important, and which is why I think that importance of it's just a chain reaction, isn't it? That support system allows me to be who I am, and that allows me to be a representation, and I think it's something that I don't take for granted at all. And I have so many examples of these kinds of people in my life who have just raised me up and helped me to be who I am. But I think we have to also understand and realize that we can be that support system for somebody else. And I believe that all of us have our little roles, big and small, to play in whatever stages of life we are in. And to me, I think it has been really helpful to remember 3 things. You know, it's to be kind to all that you meet. It's to be brave for those who cannot, and it's to truly be brave, to be yourself for you, because you are the ones who's driving all this into the world, into the whole universe. And I think it's really helped me to live a truly authentic and fulfilling life, you know. And that's all I have today for now. I'm going to pass it on to another truth speaker, Sunny Slaughter.
Thank you so much, Teresa. Frida, Dr. Indigo, thank you so much. It is an honor to be here with all of you, my sisters from KeyNote, and to represent KeyNote. I would also like to thank my family. As I was thinking about what I could say during a conversation like this and the importance of the moment and time that we are in, so much is happening in America. And one of the things that I thought about was the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, where he said, but we've got some difficult days ahead. And here in America, if you all are watching from wherever you are and across the world, we've got some difficult days ahead. We are in difficult times. And now more than ever, we have to know who we are, recognize our path, understand our purpose. And I recently put out some words talking about authentic. Being authentic is not an afterthought. The importance of these days and times where being courageous and standing up for truth. In America, every day we are faced with what I call something else. There's always something else happening. There is always another video to remind us of the injustices taking place against Black, Indigenous, people of color, but particularly the videos that we see marking the horrific era, a new era, but an old era coming together of harm, indignation, pain, and suffering of Black people. It is painful. My children are watching here in America as I speak. I have 4 children, 2 girls and 2 boys. I have a granddaughter. They are my world. And yet I am pained by all that is happening around us. The courageous conversations that I have been afforded in the midst of a pandemic have really brought out more of my purpose. It was difficult for my children to live with me and me move them about in world and in conversations of where you don't think children should understand and know the pain of others. But the reality is, a purpose-driven life is often meshed in the realities of truth and things that others either don't want to talk about or they don't want to hear about. It is the experience, the exposure of deep-seated things that must rest with those who understand what their purpose is. So in the crisis, the pandemic, where vision seemed unclear, but yet has become so clear for those of us on a mission. I have been truly honored to engage and involve myself in conversations across the globe with people who don't look like me, but who feel the same passion for humanity, that feel that we as a people, the fullness of humanity, must come together across race, across culture, across ethnicity, across faith, across disability, across gender identity, really across the spectrum of people as individuals. And I said people because humanity is focused on people. And when people hear me say, I have to center Black, because that is where we are. As a Black woman, I find myself layers upon layers of oppression, carrying the weight of not just myself, my family, my people, but of all things. And it is important for me to stand in my truth and recognize that things matter, words matter. The things that we say, they matter. They can change a life, they can change the world. And every day we are watching here. Right before I came on, I was listening to Yusef Salam. He is a man now who was a part of the what they called they're now identified as the exonerated five, but five young Black males in New York many years ago who were falsely accused of a crime that they did not commit. The least amount of time was spent in prison, innocent, 6 years, the most 13. What we say and what we do to others has lifelong consequences. We must evolve in a way that we grow out of the angst and anger. So the conversations have to be courageous. Those that have them have to show the courage. Teresa talked about where she is as a human being, not by labels or disability. Dr. Indigo talked about where she is as a human being without stigma and shame. We must all rise up against those things, the labels, the stigmas, the shame, the violence, the degradation, and recognize that we are in difficult days, but we have the opportunity to change. And I'm going to close out with Dr. Martin Luther King's words, but we've got difficult days ahead. The stark realities of our current state expose our fears and apprehensions. A tumultuous tension hangs over us like a threatening sky. We wait for moments to band together, to pray, break bread, and stand together, and live out the true meaning of our creed. As created equals, we need to harness our differences and use our distinctions to inspire a nation and a world to come together to succeed. That is only some of what he said. But I will close with, we are more than the circumstances of these times. We are the change agents and the champions of truth, integrity, and authenticity. We must value our presence and our purpose. We must recognize what we have been sent to do. And we must do those things, not for where we are now, but for the future that is sure to come. And thank you very much. And I'll turn it over to our gracious moderator, Frida.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you for sharing. So I've got a couple of questions I'd like to get your feedback on. And, we talk about living your truth, right? And why is it so difficult for us to live our truth? And I look back at my own life, being around for nearly 5 decades, right? Living this truth, is it judgment that we're so worried about? And, how can we overcome this judgment? I think firstly from ourselves, and then secondly from others. So it's a question to all of you. Maybe I can get Dr. Indigo to give your views first.
Okay, before I start, I'm going to post my book links from where a lot of this comes from. So yes, a lot of it is about, just keep in mind, as children, we would hear that saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, which is the biggest lie. Because words hurt more than sticks and stones. We can heal from sticks and stones, while words really penetrate the heart and soul, and we carry it forever. So some of us as adults have decided to not be authentic about who we are because we remember those sticks and stones of words that did hurt us, that did pierce us. So it's about letting go of the pain that we've carried for so long. It's about forgiving those people who have done things to harm us mentally, physically, socially, and so forth, so that we can be authentic with who we are.
Teresa, your thoughts? I mean, I guess you were talk about supportive parents, and that probably helps a lot. But I'm sure, we talk about judgment. Your thoughts around this?
I think for me, it's maybe getting used to the judgment and kind of just shutting it out. Because like I said, I have never really gone through some of the things that my friends have gone through. My other friends with physical disabilities and other kinds of disabilities, like in school, they've been bullied. They've had like people on the streets say passing comments at them, and I have never really gone through that. And I think for me, it's really just about knowing that that is happening, being aware that even though I'm not going through that, doesn't mean it's not happening, and then also just being, I guess, in whatever situations I can, like if I can enforce that knowledge that that's not right, I think I do that. I mean, my parents have been a huge part of it, just making sure that I'm stubborn enough to not take those judgments to heart, or I mean, even when I was thinking about coming out in the papers, like honestly, that was not a hard decision to make, only because of the situation I'm in. The fear came later, just a little bit of fear of what judgments I would face, what people might say. Would I get a call from somebody telling me that my sponsorships are revoked, or get a kind of a scolding from somebody? I was a bit afraid, but honestly, the fear of that was nothing compared to what I knew other people were going through, and that made it easier to make decisions for me. Yeah.
I think so. You've been given that platform to be a voice for others.
Yeah, and using that platform is more important to me than, like, I mean, I guess the achievements that come with being a Paralympian, I guess it's quite attractive to some people, but to me, it's never been something that I strive for. Being a Paralympian is a consequence of my journey. I never, honestly, I'm not the most competitive person. I I just kind of work hard and I got there. But everything that came with it, I wanted to make sure that it was worthwhile. I wanted to use that stage I had to push messages that were important to me. And that's where the importance of kind of hearing stories from other people, knowing what they're going through, what can be pushed out. Like, I think it is important to me.
Sunny, your thoughts?
judgment is really about other people and their insecurities and their frailties. And I was a single mom for most of my children's growing up. And I talk about the kids because as a mother and as a parent, I felt because of what happened to us, I had to be so protective. So I could not allow myself to become thwarted by the opinions of others because I always had to be strong for. There was always someone else, and those someone else's there were four. I had to be strong for them, and so I just never. I always realized that someone could judge me only from afar, but I knew my strength and who I was. I've always been strong in who I am and independent. So other people's judgment was almost irrelevant because I don't think a lot of people could walk in my shoes
Right.
and do the things that I could do.
Right. And I wanted to bring this up as well, Sunny, because about mothers and parents in general, right? You know, what do we learn from them? How do we teach our children about living the truth? I want to start with you, Sunny, because you had your mom at a very young age making you stand up for what's right.
Yes, my mother was so instrumental in my life. Okay, I'm going to get it together so I can keep it together to talk about her. Um, my mother always said that
Cheers.
yeah, look, here comes. My mother always said that I could do anything, that I was strong. I didn't say she didn't fuss, but she always said that I could just do anything. And there's no one like me in my family. Like no one had this. I didn't know what an advocate was because I didn't grow up in that life. But my mother was, and I didn't understand it at the time when she was saying you could go out and you can do whatever. She always had my back with things. So when I said, the park was dirty and I needed her to call the mayor, and I was like very young in elementary school, she did. And then we had a cleanup. So I didn't know the things that I couldn't do because my mother always said that I could. So as a parent, I've always tried to tell my kids that they could do anything. At least I think I've tried to do that. um, but she was strong. I've tried to be strong, but I didn't know the things that made her cry. I didn't understand that there were things that I didn't know because she held that from me. So I saw her as strong and never weak or
Right.
um, beaten
Eh,
down.
right. It. I just want to ask you this as well. Things that she kept from you, was that then also in a way of her not living her truth?
I think so. I think so. I think my mom was very strong and um, I think we try to do that as parents, where we try to protect our children, where they don't see us cry. I cry now probably more than ever before because in the moments when I was going through things, I didn't have time to cry. So I don't think that she allowed herself to be vulnerable in the ways, and I think that's the intersection of the vulnerability. And I know that you asked me about that before. That is where I think often that piece about vulnerability. We don't want people to see the vulnerable parts of us because it will make us seem less strong. It might compromise our strength and safety. And for me, I I flaunt my vulnerabilities because inside I know I'm strong. And then I try to help other people identify their vulnerabilities. And you can be vulnerable and strong at the same time because it does allow for you to be more authentic.
Right. I'm totally for strength and vulnerability. I think that's what when you are given a platform and you can talk about it, you're actually opening doors and allowing a lot of more people, to go through it. I mean, I go through my own story as well. And one of the things that I have a son that's almost 18. He's seen me cry, and I told him, please go ahead and cry. And that's the thing as well, right? How we raise boys and girls. It should be, you can just be the same. It's none of that boys don't cry.
Yes.
Yes, but
And my
be
son is here. My son is actually the one here with me now. And then my other son, it's boys. We think that. And, a lot of people, I want my son to know that I can hold him. I want my daughter to know that I can hold her. But I don't want them to think. I really tried to raise them to be, I taught the boys the same thing I taught the girls. And you're right, that crying, and we should not make men and boys feel weak because they have soft moments, because that really brings out humanity, the soft
Mhm.
moments, which allows for us not to judge other people. And I get a lot of people that say, Sonny, you're so inspiring. I don't know if I'm inspiring as much as I try to be strong and vulnerable at the same time.
Teresa, with your parents.
Sorry, what?
So this question about parents, how important they have been. I know you shared a little bit about them, but I think situations where they've raised you to be strong and brave in your way.
Mm. I think the things that they have done have enabled that. We're not particularly open with conversations as some families are, but it's shown through action. And I think the things that they have done to allow me to be strong, they've allowed me to understand failure is part of life. There's been I like to talk about like events, like incidents. So there was once we were in a playground when I was about 9 years old or something, and I was on crutches. So I use a wheelchair now, but I also used crutches last time. And we were passing a playground, and I was telling them that, oh, I want to climb that huge structure. And I think as a parent with a child with disability, the first instinct is protection, or any child, right? You want to protect your child. So I thought, looking back now, I thought they would have said no because I could have fallen and it would be worse. I really can't walk. But but I think it's something that they've continuously tried to teach me. Try and do, and if you fail, it's okay. But at least you can or cannot. And then you work around it. So I did climb that structure. I made it to the top. They got a photo of it somewhere. But I think that is just one incidence of future lessons that they continued to teach me. And that just made me more and more enabled, more and more independent. And then as that grew, there were less and less times I could say I can't do anything because I felt like I can. Like I still think I can do everything, until I'm stopped. But I think most times I just do what I want, and I think that's something that is a consistent lesson that they've taught me.
Right. Dr. Indigo, of parents and children, what say you?
What was interesting is that I Midwest, Chicago area, out in the cornfields of Aurora. And my mother worked for Caterpillar, which is an earth moving company that back in the 60s when she worked for Caterpillar, she was ostracized by her white counterparts because they felt like she was taking jobs from white men at that point, even though her job was cleaning toilets. But she moved up, and over time, my mother became very successful at Caterpillar. But I remember as a child, she was home early, and my father asked her, "Why did she come home early that morning?" And she said, "Because the KKK were meeting in the cafeteria, and there was a sign in the cafeteria that basically said, 'Meeting at 4 o'clock, KKK. I guess because they didn't have time to go home and get their robes, or it's easier to stay at work. But hearing these stories, they were kept from me. I understood the violence. I understood what was going on as a child of the 60s, as a child who saw not aunts, uncles come home from Vietnam, mentally unstable. I saw all that. So when I think about what is going on today, it's as if I'm living my childhood again. And for me, I have to continuously work at being emotionally balanced, meaning I have to get my sleep. I have to do Tai Chi. I have to rest. I have to constantly try to put positive things around me because there's so much negative bombarding us right now. And so when you ask the question about my parents and my children, I constantly send my children videos of things that are happening over in America because they're here with me in Asia. I don't want them to forget or to ignore what is happening to my brothers and sisters over in America. And when I say my brothers and sisters, I'm not talking specifically about African Americans. I don't use the word Black. I'm not Black. Black is not a country. That is not someplace I can go back to. I'm an African American. So I share with my sons what's happening in the plight of African Americans and how we must be vigilant and continue to share what is going on with each other and with people who want to be a part of what I believe is a movement to change the course of history.
So I've got a question now here for Sunny. Now, as I was saying, you've achieved so much looking at bio, but one key question though, can you talk about your nomination and selection to receive the 2020 Community Service Award from the American Public Health Association from the Black Caucus of Health Workers in October 2020?
Yes, thank you so much for asking about that. One of the highest achievements of my career from the Black Caucus of Health Workers from the American Public Health Association. I have been a member of the APA for about 5 years, but the Poindexter Dinner is very important. The American Public Health Association is the largest public health association anywhere with the global, a global following and network. And when I received notice that I was going to be the recipient of the Community Service Award, it was very profound because of all of the work that public health experts do. So my background intersects with law enforcement, public health, social justice, and social determinants of health, and a myriad of things that I have done over the course of 30 plus years. And it's like I said, it's only been in the last 5 years that I have been a member. And the nomination came from a former colleague with the Southeastern Health Equity Council of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. I was the regional co-chair and founder of the Violence as a Public Health Issue Committee, which focused on the 8 states, southern states, and the work, intersectional work. So they didn't have a committee which focused on violence as a public health issue. And when I first got on the committee with a lot of, we have public health officials, we have attorneys. So these are not all public health officials, folks from various institutions. I was the only person that had their own company, and not people didn't necessarily think of my work as a public health official until I learned to connect the dots between all of the things that were important. So the work we focused on had to do with intersectional trauma, disruption, social determinants of health that impact Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and across the myriad of spectrums for Georgia and Alabama, Mississippi, Kentucky, Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, in Florida. And we did a lot of great work until this most recent administration came in. I did a lot of first there, including creating the committee, which served a lot. But I've been to the White House 3 different times. I've met stars and collaborated and done a lot of work at high institutions. But this is very important to me at this time in my life when we are in such a crisis, when there's intersectional trauma and experiences. And the work here is needed and necessary. But this award is the highest professional recognition that a person can get in their careers. So it is very humbling. It is very, very humbling. And I am also going to present on a panel. I just found that out too. I'm going to present as a distinguished panelist I'm going to talk about the topic of human trafficking. The panel is for sex workers and the sex trade and sex trafficking. But I have always redirected people to talk about human trafficking and the trafficking of persons. It's some work that I've done for more than 2 decades. And but I'm not going to talk about sex trafficking. I am going to really address all of the ways in which people are trafficked and exploited through the many forms, labor trafficking, and the criminalization of people of color, mass incarceration, all of the ways that people don't think that this matters, and all across the country, because I've done a lot of international work on human trafficking. And so that's important. Thank you for asking.
Right. Congratulations, Sunny. I know we've got some questions here. It's a very good question from Val Clark, and we'll get to that a little later as well. So if you do have any questions, we will be addressing them later. Do start typing it in. Val, I think that's a very pertinent question, which I'll get to a little later. Now, I want to ask Dr. Indigo here, and she says, so you talk about shades of gray and how we are multifaceted. My word. And many people live a life of falsehood for a myriad of reasons, right? And it's easier to hide or not disclose the truth and live a lie versus living your truth. So, why is it important for you to talk about being diagnosed with bipolar disorder?
Well, what's interesting is that I could have lived my life and never mentioned it, never mentioned it. And to be honest with you, some of the hurdles and obstacles I'm confronted with would never have happened if I could have kept it quiet. But I believe when we are honest with ourselves, when we are able to really step back and say, this is who I am. This is why I do what I do. This is both a blessing and curse, and I have to accept all of it. Let me tell you, having a mental health disorder is not a man magnet. So going out saying, hey, I have bipolar disorder has not any dates. So at this point in my life, it would have been better to not say anything. But there are people who need to hear that they too, just like how my sister Teresa speaks about her condition and so forth, there are people who need to hear it so that they can understand a little bit more about themselves. I have people contact me all the time who will say, this is happening in my life and I don't understand it. And I can easily be able to pinpoint where it's coming from a mental health disorder. And once they understand, there's a thing, G.I. Joe was a cartoon. And when he would beat the bad guy, he would say, knowing is half the battle. I believe that's true, that knowing is half the battle. If we can share with people our truth about who we are and what circumstances and the journey that we are on, we're able to help people have and win half the battle.
Right. Okay. So there is also the thing behind living the truth and my privacy, right? And I'm gonna ask you this question, of course, Teresa. I'm gonna refer to Teresa, right? As in, so she's a Paralympian. What does her sexual orientation has anything to do with her sports performance, right? Why do we, like, why should it matter what her sexual orientation is? And I'll ask Dr. Indigo, and of course Teresa can speak for herself too.
Are you asking me or
I'm asking you first. Like, like, so we talk about, you coming out and talking about how you have you diagnosed with mental disorder, bipolar disorder. Why does it, and maybe it's a true reflection because it's something that you do in your work, right? But I'm looking at the case of Teresa. She's a Paralympian. Her sports performance is what matters, right? Why does it matter what her sexual orientation is? It's nothing to do with a sports performance. And that fine line between telling the truth and it's my business.
right? So I'm excited about hearing what Teresa has to say about it. But for me, you alluded that it's a part of my platform because for some, it can be a blessing or the curse when we talk about mental health disorder.
Right.
When I was first diagnosed, and I remember clearly when the doctor came back in with my results, they did all these tests. I literally prayed to God that they found a tumor in my MRI, that I had a brain tumor that they could then do an operation and remove it. So when they said, no, you have bipolar disorder, and two, for that fact, which is one of the best to have, you have to have something. But when I found out, my life changed. I had a life sentence to what at the time I called a life sentence to crazy. But here's the thing, for me, it's actually a blessing because the things that I do as a result of having it is phenomenal. If you look at some of the people in history, like Lincoln, who they said was crazy as hell for letting those slaves go. When we look at it from a scientist, a research, we believe he had it. So I say that to say this. Because I have this diagnosis, because I live with this part of my life, it's a platform for me to help others. It's called lived experience. Even though I have a PhD in research in this area, it's totally different to speak about it from a lived experience and not just from books. So for me, I speak about it because I want to help people move from the darkness to the light. But for other people who share the sexual orientation, I don't know. So I'm looking forward to hearing from Teresa on that.
Over to you.
I mean, I think personally, like, I feel like I have these labels, right? I'm disabled, I'm gay, and then I have the Paralympian label. And then these are the three main things. And I feel like over the course of the past 30 over years of my life, there have been parts of me that people want to make to quieten down. Like, they're very keen on raising my sports side. They're like, oh, all these medals and stuff, and wow, look how amazing. And then the disabled part of me, they can't silence because it's so obvious. And so they kind of talk about it, but it's still talked about as though it's in spite of your disability, as though it's a bad thing. So it's still talking about it as not a good thing. And then my queer part of me, they're very keen on not talking about it at all. and then the more I realize that, the more I'm like, why? You wanna talk about my story, you have to talk about all of it. You don't get to choose which one fits you best. All the parts of me make up me, like all the what's that quote? The sum of all of parts something. I can't think of it now, but like I think it's just because of that makes me even more stubborn. Like I think I always enforce the fact that you want to talk about this part, you have to talk about this part too. And it's also, I guess, the privilege of being able to sit on all these different labels, all these different communities. I think it's really, for me, it's a privilege to be able to have such, I guess, a unique kind of lived experience. In the environment that I'm in. I think I'm proud to be able to say that I am gay, I am disabled, and I am a Paralympian. Like all these things, I am super proud of who I am. And to be able to do that, is not something that is that common, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
I get it. And I guess like earlier to the point I was alluding to, that you have the platform, right? It's also that thing where I'm talking about privacy is like, oh yeah, so I'm a radio presenter. By the way, I'm heterosexual. You shouldn't, I mean, like,
Yeah.
I hope we'll get to this stage where it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
I
I
think
guess
that's what I'm trying to say.
I get what you mean. Like, I think
Yeah.
if we once get to the point where everybody has that that level of equal, like, which we definitely don't see now. You can't say that, right? There's certain parts of people that just pull us back, and I think once we get to that stage, maybe then labels won't matter. But then I think at this point, it's just because of how there is that silencing of parts that's important to make it louder,
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And okay, so this is a question for everyone. How words, we talk about have the power of death and life to ourselves and for others, right? So how do you choose your words to be uplifting, brave, and true? And maybe it's your personal mantras that you say to yourself, or things that you say to others as well. Maybe I'll start with you, Sunny.
Yes, thank you. That your life has purpose. I always say to myself that not that I'm just here, but I believe that I am here for a purpose. I believe that we all have a purpose. It doesn't have to, some people are not religious. I am a Christian, I am a spiritual person, but I just believe that when I walk in my purpose, that means I'm moving forward. I believe that my family and friends. So I just think, always going after what that thing is that you are here to do on earth.
Right.
What is your time like? What is I always also focus on my legacy. Like, what do I leave for not just me, but for my children and my granddaughter? What do I want them to be able to say? My mother, my nana, these are the things that I just left behind. This is how I'm recognized.
Right. Teresa, words that you say to yourself.
I mean, I mentioned a little bit of it just now. Like, I think the be kind, be brave, be yourself. I think these are three things I found that have been most useful for me in making sure that I'm living a fulfilled life. But I think just it's a daily exercise, like trying to catch yourself when you are saying things that I guess should not matter. I mean, it's the small things, I think. Like, small things like telling somebody that they they look good today, or I mean, just kind of sending positive vibes out. But and I don't know, like, I think it's just a daily exercise of knowing the intentions of what you say and the intentions of what you want to mean, whether they're coming out the right way. I think it's all the little things that matter. Yeah, ultimately, yeah.
Dr. Indigo, words.
Well, let's start with what I don't do. I don't do DIY bullying, negative self-talk. A lot of people do negative self-talk about what they aren't versus who or what they should be. So that's one thing. The second thing is positive affirmations. I practice what I preach. I'm a wellness practitioner. So every morning, without any brush my teeth, I am doing positive affirmations and visualizations. So I have words and phrases that I constantly say to myself. And going back to when I was speaking a little bit earlier, I said, speak your truth into existence. Find that word, that phrase that you can even put as your signature in your emails to remind you of who you are or what you aspire to be or do, or your behaviors. So that's what I believe keeps me grounded and keeps me living the life of authenticity.
Right. So I'm going to ask a question here now, and this is from Val Clark. She says, as a privileged white woman living in Australia, my heart goes out to all of you women. Tell us what women like me can do on a personal level. I guess what can we all do on a personal level, to support and to change. Sunny, Dr. Indigo, Lisa?
Well, I'll start. I believe what's most important is I applaud you for saying that I am privileged. For those of you who can get in touch with me, I have a beautiful video about what is privilege, because a lot of people cannot wrap their head around that whole phrase of white privilege. They think it's a negative or a slap in the face, but really it's just saying there's a state of being that you are able to have. So one, I applaud you for that. So as a person of privilege and anyone, I recommend that you spend time understanding the issues, understanding that what is happening, not on a local level, but a global and local. Far too often, we have been in our own cocoon about what's happening to us in Singapore or what's happening to us in DC and so forth. But I say to you, COVID or Corona, 2020 has been a blessing for us. And this is why it has caused us to connect on a level never seen before. Would not have happened where I would be on a conference call with Teresa, Sunny, and Frida. That would not have happened last year. It's happening this year as a result of that pandemic. So let's take full advantage of it. Let's understand one another's issues locally so that we can combine. I believe we've been called to come together in such a way that never has happened before. And if we miss this opportunity, we may be living with the consequences for hundreds of years out. This is the window and the door of opportunity for us to make a difference. We have been called to be our sisters' keepers, our brothers' keepers on a global or local level. So that's what we need to do. We need to understand the issues and then speak up about them and take action for those of you who are action oriented.
Right. Sunny?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Indigo. I think privilege is also a part of your perspective, because privilege is more than race. It is socioeconomics. It has a lot to do with, as we say, gender identity. So I think you just have to recognize the fact that you say that you are a person of privilege. That is a start. And I think you should read, like Dr. Indigo said, recognize the issues. And I've been doing a lot of international and local speaking on race and privilege for several years now, more than ever. And people always say, well, what can I do? So here's the question that I say: what have you been doing? First, first ask yourself, what have you been doing? Where have you been in the moments, and see what you may or may not have recognized. And then figure out what change you want to see, not in anyone else first, but in your own being first. What can you do to change your circumstances? I'm not talking about change your finances, but how do you want to grow to be a person that impacts humanity differently? Do you not ignore things? Do you speak up? What do you speak up about, and what do you say? Are you informed? And what you would like to see differently? Because we all see things from the lens from which we sit and which we stand, and sometimes in which we kneel. But when we recognize who we are, where we are, and what we can do to make a difference, then I think that changes everything. And I would just like to quickly say, Teresa, I love your words. And Banu just put them in there: be kind, be brave, and be yourself. That, I think, that also intersects with privilege. Are you kind to someone? Are you brave enough to stand up for them? And do you recognize, and I think Val, you did, you said you recognize your privilege. So how do you make a difference? And thank you so much for the question.
You're muted. You're muted. I can't hear you.
I think one of the things that, did you want to add anything to that, Teresa?
Very briefly, I guess. I mean, I'll definitely echo what Sunny and Dr. Indigo has said. The recognition of your privilege is the first step, because I was asked a question recently on what can be done to change mindsets in another interview, and I was saying you can't change a mindset of somebody who doesn't want to be changed, you know. And if they don't even recognize they need to be like, if their mindset needs to be changed, what can you do about it, you know? There's only so much force you can put, and I think that's the first step. And then reading up, educating yourself about it, and putting it to action. I think that's the last step. Yeah.
Right. So I was saying that one of the things that I learned in neuro-linguistic programming is this thing called the map of the world, right? Your map of the world is so different from my map of the world, depending on where I live, my education, my race, my religion. So, and when I look at my map of the world, do certain things need to change? Do I need to change the geography to serve me better, to be of value to others? And understand that no, the map of the world doesn't need to be fixed in that sense, right? Which brings up this question from Tallulah, and Sunny sort of answered on the chat, but I'll address it to everyone else. And she just said, we talk about inequalities and acceptability in the world we live with. How do we change mindsets today? Sunny, if you want to continue, if not, I'll get Dr. Indigo to talk a little bit about that. Dr. Indigo.
Okay. Well, let me just say, you used the analogy of the map. Let me use the analogy of a kaleidoscope. I love the whole concept of a kaleidoscope. I think what we don't do is that we don't think in terms of the kaleidoscope when we're viewing things. We view through our own lenses, as Sunny said. And so I like the kaleidoscope because when you put a kaleidoscope up, it's perfect, it's beautiful. But if you twist it just ever so slightly, things change. And then it goes into focus again. And if you turn it again, things change and it goes into focus again. I think that's what life is about. That's what appreciating and value diversity and inclusion is about. Is that we must, and truth, is that when we even look at truth, if you just change the way you see things, the things you see will change based on what Wayne Dyer said. So I think if we start not looking through our glasses, but through a kaleidoscope lens, we can see so much, so many things that are already there, but we'll see it differently. And when we see it differently, then we can deal with it differently.
All right. Teresa, and I'll get to Sun. Changing mindsets. Yeah.
I don't read. I think it's just it's again something. It depends on your reach. It depends on your platform. It depends on so many things. I think that desire to change mindset. You just have to know yourself first. I think. I think for me, it's about not wanting to. I don't know. Like I think it's not wanting to. I think it falls back on that what I said just now, and how like you can't change the mindset of somebody who doesn't want to be changed, right? I think it's about finding the people who are in kind of near where you stand and pulling them closer. It's about finding that little bit of parallel, you know, and then getting them to kind of get on the boat with you. I don't know, like, you know, so it's just I think people need to just kind of widen their reach on their lens and really figure out where they stand first, because I think a lot of times we just believe what we hear and then not really expand our reach, our worldview on things, you know. I used to think that I don't want to be called disabled because I thought disabled was a bad word. And that's because of what I hear, you know. I heard that disabled is bad, being disabled is bad, and then I was like, yeah, okay, disabled is bad. And so then I perpetuated that until I read a bit more, I reached a little bit further and realized that I don't think it is a bad word, you know. I embrace it. I think it's part of what has made me who I am. It's part of my privilege, you know. It's part of everything and has made me who I am. I think it's a great thing. I think it's one of the things that I'm really happy that I have. My disability has been a blessing for me. Yeah.
Okay. I think, like you said, it probably starts with self-awareness. I think, like for me as a journalist as well, you tend to sort of refer to certain, when doing research, you tend to look for things that you want to listen to, right? And it's a conscious effort to get a different perspective so that you be as neutral as possible in reporting and not have your biases in. And it is a conscious effort to do that. Sunny, did you want to add on to what you answered to Tallulah online? How do we change mindsets? Yeah.
No, I guess maybe just one thing I would, because I said, you know, we change perspectives one moment, one person at every time in every exchange. And as Teresa said, it's really about the information that people have. When I've been trained in law enforcement since 2008, and the culture can be difficult when you're training different across broad perspectives of entities and not just individual people. So when you think about changing culture and perspectives, I think you just have to meet people where they are and provide additional information to them.
Right.
And because when you try to force a change, that does not happen. So as Teresa was saying, you know, she changed her own because we're conditioned, which is another word that you use, Rita. You know, the conditioning begins long before we begin to interact with other people. So I just think you give people information and you allow them to kind of like nibble on it in their own way. But and like Dr. Indigo said, she said a kaleidoscope, and I have something that I've always said, a 360-degree lens with Sunny Slaughter. I don't come in with blinders on because I have a view. I come in with them off to try to see all sides of things, even if I don't agree.
Okay, and you know, you're right about giving information to where they are. I'll tell you about a situation in Malaysia, and then I'll ask a final question. When we had this survey done on what is equality, and the definition of equality is so different for some people, like equality for women. So one will say, yes, we want gender equality. And for some people, equality, if my husband has 4 wives and treats us all equally, that's equality. So where is it coming from, right? Okay, my final question is about mental health, right? And I think it's going to be an even bigger issue now, perpetuate what's happened around the world from the Black Lives Matter to the pandemic. So why is living the truth even more crucial now? I'll start with you, Dr. Indigo.
I think it's important because, and let me just, you know, I speak on this quite a bit these days, that when we talk about mental health itself is on a spectrum of illness to wellness. And we move along that spectrum daily. So right now, if we said mental illness, that would be a 1. That means psychotic or schizophrenic, on medication, dysfunctional. 10 would be balanced, peaceful, well, happy, and so forth. If we look at where you are or where I am, right now, I would say I'm an 8 or 9. I'm very well. But I can get off this call right now and have someone say, your mother and your brother were in a pileup. They're at the hospital. You need to get there right away. I will move from 8 to 6 immediately. And then when I get to the hospital and they'll say, Well, we're not sure what's going on. We'll come back out. I may move down to 4. I may even move to 2 where I need meds to just calm my nerves, right? But then when they come out and say all is well, I'll move back. So a lot of times when we think of mental health, we think of illness and we think of the stigma associated with it. So we don't want to deal with it, even for ourselves. And because of that, some of us are moving along that spectrum far too often, not being in the well state because we're unwilling to recognize that mental health is like physical health. So yes, coming out of the global pandemic and what is going to await us, even with vaccines or whatever they're planning for us, there are going to be all of us, not some of us, all of us will be impacted because it is a mind, body, spirit connection. Whether you think it's in the mind, it may be impacting you physically. You may be ill, you may have headaches, nervousness, and so forth, which then impact the mind, which impacts your spirit. It's all together. So we have to become accustomed to having these conversations. And I'm a champion of mental health. And what I say, this is my tagline, is moving the conversation from mental illness to mental wellness.
Teresa?
Yeah, I mean, it's I think for me, it's going through this pandemic has been has brought up like conversations with myself, like how do you maintain that that kind of self-care with yourself, and how do you not be also blind to what's happening outside of your world. And I think it's always been to me about a balance of being able to take care of yourself first, and then so you can take care of other people. I think it's just a balance of making sure you are constantly connected with what's happening, because then you know how that you kind of have a I guess a goal and what you have to do, but also being able to reach within yourself to know when you need to step away, I guess. But even that action of stepping away, I think is really steeped in a little bit of privilege, because there's some people who just can't, can't step away from what they're going through. And yeah, it's a balance. It's a balance.
Right. Sunny?
Thank you so much for the question. I would like to say that during these times, people are having so many experiences, so many emotions. And Teresa has said this several times: be kind. We don't know what someone is going through at the moment. So we should all just be kind. The pandemic and the crisis and everything, um, the racial unrest has intersectional trauma experiences are real. Some people are recognizing those and some are not. Give yourself some grace to know that when you are in trouble, and recognize the times that you are in, and give others grace and know when to step away. I get bombarded. There's a lot going on. I'm trying to keep my children safe and healthy. I'm trying to keep myself safe and well. And we just all need grace.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies. I think we ended off really nicely about grace. We all need a little bit of grace. We need to give a bit of that grace. So thank you again, everyone, for being here and talking about the truth and living bravely. Of course, a couple thanks to KeyNote as well for organizing this, and the ladies from KeyNote. And do check out the virtual booths after the session. So thank you for everyone who has joined us today. And I think you can get hold of us via the different sources, LinkedIn. I'm sure you just do a search and you'll be able to find everybody. Thank you so much.
Can I say something to you, Frida? I would like to thank you so much. You are an amazing, absolutely amazing moderator. You are so well. They are blessed to have you. I look forward to meeting you in person. You rock. Yes, she does. You rock. You rock. Teresa, Dr. Indigo, thank you, my sisters. I love you all. Be well.
Wait a minute.
Amen.
And happy,
Again.
happy
Sweetest.
birthday.
Happy
soon.
birthday.
Happy birthday.
Not today, coming soon. Thank you,
Okay.
everyone. Okay, we'll let you go rest. Bye now.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.